Welcome to the Founder Podcast. I'm your host, Magnus Olsson, and joining me is Full Spectrum founder Ben Maher. Today we're sitting down with a man shaping the future of young Australians. Mick Egan is a former principal and now the Executive Officer for the Catholic Secondary Principals in Australia. He believes education is about purpose, character, and faith in action. His journey carries a vision for the next generation, and today we're going to find out what it takes to guide young people in our fast-changing world. Mick, welcome to the Founder Podcast.
Thanks, Magnus. Thanks, Ben. Good to be here.
All right, mate, just to give our audience a bit of context, can you just give us a brief description of what life was like growing up for you?
Life was great growing up for me. I was born and bred in Maroubra, which is in the eastern suburbs of Sydney. It's probably best known for its Maroubra's the electorate in New South Wales with the highest percentage of public housing. So I grew up on a public housing estate, but we were blessed to have a whole lot of golf courses around and beautiful beaches and all sorts of things going on, and great opportunities for young people with the airport nearby and General Motors Holden with a big factory. Life was just good.
Do you remember, was there a particular moment when you first realised that education, and specifically Catholic education, was going to be your calling?
I think at the later stages of schooling, I got involved with the leadership groups at school, and we used to organise dances and things like that, and I liked getting involved with organising things and got a buzz out of the chance to put things on for my mates. So when it came to picking what to do, teaching seemed a pretty logical sort of thing to have a crack at.
So in terms of leadership, you obviously moved from a sort of, principal leadership role to obviously what you're doing now, which is a national role, with CASPA. So what was the personal, did you find you had to have a personal shift with that, and how did you handle that transition?
Yeah, it's been a massive shift for me. I was leading a school with over 1,000 kids and 130 staff, so my days were completely full with interacting with people about things that meant something to them immediately. They needed an answer or a hand with something, or a shoulder to cry on, or someone to just howl at the moon with. But now in this job, it's about policy, it's about connecting with the people who are making the big ticket decisions, and it's basically working at home on my own most of the time. So I meet up with my board of CASPA 4 times a year in person, and a few other times via this sort of electronic connection, but most of the time it's a very reflective job, and one where I get to put in considered opinions about a lot of the big ticket items happening, and to disseminate that information to my former brother principals, which is a key part of the role. I coordinate a monthly newsletter and opportunities for professional development too. So things like conferences for school leaders. And it's a different pace, and it's not as frantic as running a school was, but by the same token, it's important work, and it's work where I feel that principals have a real voice into what's going on. A lot of the people who run education in our country they went to school, so they're experts about school education, but to listen to the principals, I think we bring an element of understanding of how schools can work, how good schools can work, that's sometimes missing in the debate about what should be going on in schools.
Just to shift sideways slightly, and from a personal perspective, I know that you are a Catholic. What does faith mean to you?
Faith's central to the way I operate. I sometimes get people come in to enrol in a school and they go, well, I like what you do here, there and that, I like your discipline, I like your uniform, and I like your results. And I feel like saying half the time, well, frankly, unless you're here for a Catholic education, you're probably in the wrong place, because the reality is most schools are good at those things, or can be. And so they should be. All schools should be good schools. But for someone who comes from a faith background, I really want that to be part of what I pass on to my own children, and I want to help provide the opportunity for other people of faith too. Schools, in lots of ways, aren't the ideal place to learn. You probably learn best when you're amongst your friends and with your family. But it's necessary in terms of organisation for us to have schools as we have them today. We want to make sure they're good ones. And a faith-based one, I think, means when your faith is at the heart of what you do, it really enhances everything else that's going on in the place. You can't go into how would I put it? If I went to a school that was run by what I'd call a bean counter, then we'd have every class chock-a-block full. We'd try and cut off the rough edge kids so that they were, because it's easier to educate a bunch of homogenised people, and that's not what we're on about. If you're in a faith-based setting, you take people as they are and you try and walk forward with them. And you do that with a set of values that you believe in. And from my point of view, I guess I grew up Catholic, but I choose to remain Catholic, and I would recommend it to other people too.
So, out of all the communities you've served and, obviously the travel and, the young people that you've met, I suppose, what have they taught you about connectiveness and humanity and, what really matters? So how would you translate that to our audience today?
Well, I think the more you come in touch with young people, the closer you are to the elemental things. Young people just thrive on life. So life is foremost and front. I believe in, if you like, the right to life and the essential equality of people as living beings, and that we should hold that precious. So that means that within a school context, I learn again and again some of the greatest challenges, but also the greatest joys of working with people who are struggling with life. Kids who are sick, disabled, kids who have particular needs. These are the ones that make for the real moments in a teacher's life. These are the ones that get the most out of education, and these are the ones that basically our schools should be prioritising. In the particular charism I spent probably 20 years working for, the De La Salle charism of schools, we had a stated mission statement, if you like, that we were for the Christian and human education of young people, but particularly the poor. And when you talk about the poor, there are people who have all different sorts of poverty in our society that a faith-filled education can have great benefits for. The poor can be people who are materialistically poor, they can be people who are spiritually poor, people who are struggling with the modern tensions of today's world, and there are plenty of those about at the moment, and kids are particularly vulnerable at the moment to a lot of the external pressures that I'd never even imagined when I was growing up. It's a challenging time to be a young person, and probably even more challenging time to be a parent in these days. And faith can provide an anchor for people and a lens to look at your life through, and there can be many different ways, I'm sure, of doing this, but if you have a faith structure that you adhere to, it can give you a starting construct to set your life up for good things.
You mentioned pressure for students today. I know that we spoke off camera, so you transitioned from a teacher and got into being a principal, which not too many teachers get the opportunity to do. So from now, from a national viewpoint, what do you see to be the biggest challenges for 2026 for principals?
Oh, look, the biggest challenges at the moment are the bureaucracy that's grown up around education. When I began teaching and began even principalship, there were lots of pieces of legislation we had to adhere to. I think I remember in one of my earliest encounters with another principal, he counted them. There were 80 pieces of legislation he had to comply with to keep himself clean. But it's more than double that now, and increasingly we're in a society that's become so regulated, and one of the worst places that lands is in schools. There are so many people wanting things to be done in schools that don't necessarily need to be, and it's almost as if schools are being expected to be a fix-all for the woes of society at the moment. And whereas they should be focused, and where most principals would like to be them focused on the kids' individual learning.
So at the beginning of your career, or sort of, just along your journey, I mean, might not even be your career, just in terms of life in general, who have been some people in your life that have helped shape your journey through and in leadership?
Probably the first one was one of my mother's friends. He used to live across the road when she was growing up, and he was a teacher. And through my early life, I struck him a number of times, and he was able to give great encouragement to me as a person. It's sometimes people from the strangest sort of circumstance. He wasn't a blood relative or anything, but he was a trusted friend of my mother's, and took an interest in myself and my brother, and I appreciated that. Through schools, I came across some wonderful principals that I worked with over the years that encouraged me to take on different jobs. You don't go from teacher to principal. There's a number of sort of steps in between. I took on many of the roles that are available to people looking for leadership in schools. I was what was called a year coordinator, or pastoral care coordinator for a number of years. I was a sport coordinator for a while. I remember 1986 was one of the rainiest years on record. I was a sports coordinator having to cope with 14 raining Thursdays in a row. We were showing movies to kids and trying to get them to do, or what was similar to Zumba now in the hall, because we could pack lots of them into one small space. But like you honed your skills, and as I got more senior in the role, I was given a chance to lead in curriculum areas, and that was a big step up as well. The people, one of my happiest times was working with a principal called Pat Howlett, who was an absolute monster of a man. He was a contemporary of Arthur Beetson and Merv Cross, the former rugby captain of Australia. This guy, I would have hated to have come across him on the field. He was just probably 6'8" and 140 kilos, and he just would have flattened anyone. And as a school leader, you could just see him. Kids would tell stories about him, he'd be getting cranky, and he'd have kids would think he was about to swallow them whole. He was so imposing a figure. And yet, in terms of his understanding of how schools worked and encouragement of people to get involved in leadership when he sort of struggled with the bureaucracy even then, it was great to be part of his crew for a while. And and each and every stage I've had a chance to work with some fantastic school leaders. And some of those were religious or consecrated religious brothers and others, and they were by and large good people. It's just been such a shame that there's been a section of that community that have been tied up in so many horrible things that we've learned of later in years.
I notice a lot of schools, they balance between tradition and innovation. What do you think's a tradition from the Catholic standpoint? What's a tradition that you think that we need to protect, and what's one that, from an innovative perspective, we should be evolving a little bit quicker than what we are at the moment?
I'm a big fan of competitive sport in schools. I think this has been weakened over a long period of time now, to the point where I'm seeing schools cancelling sport altogether. I witnessed the change where sport sort of went out the window. Like health came into the curriculum, but unfortunately in a lot of places it was at the expense of sport for young people. And I think they needed to be doing both. And you need to get outside, you need to take tumbles and falls, and you need to be part of a team, and to know the horror of loss and the elation of a win. And these things build character in people, and the more things we can do that help build character. And I bundle in with them the sorts of things we love doing in schools around camps and in our religious schools, retreats. These are all good things that have to be kept. And in any shake-up of curriculum, these things are part of the tradition that, unfortunately, as we move into a more bean counting mentality for time in schools and working things out that way, they're really under threat. In terms of innovation, look, there's been lots of good things happen. The way that teachers plan for their lessons has changed greatly over time. I remember when I first started teaching in 1984, I was handed a science curriculum for years 7 to 10, and it was 2 pages. And on one level, it was great. I could literally go in and do whatever I wanted. But on another level, there wasn't much guidance for a young teacher. Today, we have fantastic resources available. The difference to what I've grown up with myself, we had very few chances to look at videos of things. Now you can go on virtual tours of things you're talking about through history and to engage with well-enacted reenactments and things. It's great technology, but it comes with a dangerous flip side, and that's the exposure of kids, the unregulated use of technology. It can be a fearful thing.
So you've worked directly with, big organisations like the ACU, ACARA, NCC. Like, the education landscape is obviously quite full on at the moment. We're sitting here today. What's the date today, Magnus?
Today is the 18th of November, Ben.
Yep, and I'm pretty sure, if I'm not wrong, they've just announced a strike for next week in the education department for teachers here in Queensland. So, it's obviously an interesting landscape nationally at the moment, regardless of state. We work in all states, and it seems very interesting. I guess just to zone it into you, what would you say are the themes or the things that maybe the general public doesn't hear about that, you feel are the prevalent themes in education at the moment?
Yeah, well, I guess whenever they're talking about strikes, you're talking about people who are disgruntled for whatever reason. And it's usually around money and time. They want better conditions, and that's a reasonable expectation. We're in a very wealthy country here. We have fantastic resources compared to others in terms of the sorts of setup. But in terms of societal terms, the teaching profession has slipped remarkably backwards over a period of time. When I began teaching, my remuneration as a beginning teacher was roughly the same as a backbench politician at the state level. If you look at that comparative to today, a backbench politician in Queensland would be earning triple a senior teacher's wage. So the parity's changed very differently, and you can gloss it up any way you want, but at the end of the day, how much you pay people tells you how much you think they're worth. And at the moment, teachers aren't worth much. So
while
that remains, things aren't going to get a whole lot different. If you're looking at a big theme that doesn't get much play, it's also related to money, but it's to do with infrastructure in schools. The bottom line is our country is growing in terms of the number of young people, and it's moving as well. We're becoming more consolidated in the cities, and we're not keeping pace with spending on infrastructure for schools. And we're certainly not putting money into building what I'd call 21st century schools in terms of the things that they have and can do. There are too many kids in our rural schools who are in conditions that we wouldn't let other people work in. They're in classrooms that aren't air conditioned, they're in furniture that's not ergonomically fit for people to sit in. We're really doing things that are expedient for them. I think every school needs the space for kids to run around and given the time to actually get outside and run around. But too many of our schools are built on postage stamps, and the bits of land are being sold off or used for other purposes. So we've got a bit to do there. But saying that, we're a lot better off than some of our surrounding neighbours. You know, if you toddle into a school in Papua New Guinea or in the Southeast Asia, as I have, they have woeful resources. But again, they're in a different economic environment to us. We're a wealthy country. I think we need to look after our children with well-staffed and well-outfitted schools.
When you look ahead, Mick, what concerns you most about the future of Catholic secondary education, and what gives you hope?
In terms of the things that concern, it bothers me that our schools will never thrive unless the state system of schools is thriving as well. And at the moment, I think our state schools have been shortchanged, and it's created an environment where things are not as equitable as they should be. But I don't think the standard that we aspire to offer should be cut back. I think it's very much there needs to be some heavy lifting done with our government schools. And one of the greatest tragedies I've seen is getting lost in the crossfire of this reckoning of which schools are good or better or best is the emphasis in some states on selective schools, which to me just has the sole impact of destroying the comprehensive state schools around them. It rips out a vital segment of the school population and reeks of an elitism that shouldn't be there. At the moment in Catholic schools, we're on the flip side of this. We're seen to, I think, in some circles, to have been privileged for a long while because the state governments haven't been coming to the party with their own government schools. But the reality is we're not attracting nearly enough of the poor people from even the Catholic community. We do tend to attract a lot of the poorer persons from the non-Catholic side of things, and our schools are very attractive to these people. If they're going to spend money on education, they're happy to use our system because they're aligned in many cases with our values. Even if they're not practitioners of our faith, they see a kindred spirit in terms of what they want for children, and that's a good place to be.
So, like, beyond the qualifications, which seem obvious in education, what do you think makes an exceptional school leader?
It's got to be passion. You've got to be 100% committed, and to the school, to the framework within which it works. If you've got a passionate principal, they will find a way to make things happen that wouldn't necessarily happen, and that's very much the role of the leader. The other is that you've got to be a person with great empathy for others and time for others. I think the greatest thing a principal can do in a school is to be present, which, you know, the best ones I see, these are the ones that are at the gate greeting people when they arrive. They've got a time set aside where any staff member can come in and say good day and see them. And that if you're a parent, you don't have to wait or go through 20 hoops to get to see that leader. Now that comes at a personal cost for the leader, but if you want to run a community, which your school is, you've got to make yourself available in that way.
Do you think we're doing enough to develop new leaders, and what are Catholic education in specifically doing?
A lot of our formation with the leaders in Catholic schools, I think we do a lot of really good things. We tend to do a lot of it by taking processes that are age-old in our church, taking time for retreat and pilgrimage, where you literally get out of your thing. You take a break, a breather. You give people the time to step back and reflect on both themselves and what they want to be doing with their life. I think in processes like this, you hone your skills. I've done a number of programs like that, and they've been life enriching beyond just the job. They're good for you as a person, I feel, to take these times to go and spend a bit of time in a monastery, or to go and walk the Camino, or to go in the footsteps of someone you admire and see how they live and process. They're great things. On the technical side though, there's some fantastic programs out. There's a Harvard School of Education runs a course here. It's a week-long course in the holiday, and as a principal, I've got along to that and been with people from all three sectors of schooling, and they really get into quality assurance and trying to, how can you make your school the best it can be with the resources you have available at the time. These things are good things, and things I think are starting to be done really well. But there needs to be a whole level of, I think, autonomy for people aspiring to be principals to choose what they want to do and to do it when they want. There's a backlog for women, unfortunately. I guess the time in your life where you'd be starting to aspire to school principalship quite often coincides with the time where people also want to be rearing children. So we need to get beyond that too, because I think we've missed a whole group of women who would be excellent school leaders, because we haven't given them the autonomy to be able to get on to do both, to be a mother and to be a leader in the school. And that would be a good thing too.
So 2035, let's wind forward. You've got the chance to design the ultimate school. What would you want for its culture, formation, and what would you want its general well-being to look like? Like, just maybe in one sentence, what would you want it to look like? What would be an overarching comment? 2035, the ideal school, Catholic secondary school, what would it look like?
Yeah, well, for me, the ideal school has to be firmly grounded in a particular charism of the church. If I rattled off a few, you'd have heard of some. There are Ignatian schools, there are Mara schools. I worked in De La Salle schools. Brigidine schools is another big group with, and these have a particular way of doing things. And I'm not going to be game to try and say which one's better or not. In fact, I think they all have something particular to offer. Yep. But you have to have a schema that goes beyond a particular principle. You have to commit to something over a long period of time. It lets your alumni tap into it, and it builds, a sense of community that goes beyond what's going on this week. This is the way we do things around here, and that's critical. The other is to, have your way of being that leads you to educational excellence. The last thing I would want is a Catholic school that's not as good as the local state school. And if we got to a point where we couldn't afford to run Catholic schools that were as good as our state schools, that'd be the time we should be closing them and getting out of them. Our primary purpose is to bring young people to know and love God, which is a bit of novelty in certain circles. There'd be a sense that over a long period of time, adherence to organised religion in this country has been dropping. But since, probably a bit before COVID, but since COVID, things are starting to flip a bit there, and religious adherence is on the rise again. There's also, a pushback. We're moving into a more volatile time where there's some really extreme sorts of views around. We see all sorts of people marching on Parliament House at the moment. People are starting to rely on or to revisit what they think about a religious sort of and of a God-related way of life. And I, for one, thinks that's a critical thing. And if we lost that too much, then again, there'd be no point in having a Catholic school without that. It's a heart. What do I want the culture to be? I think we need to start moving into more formation, not just for the students, but to be really focused on how we form our staff and how we form our parents. When I was a kid, there were only 3 kids in my family. We were a bit on the low-hanging fruit. There were lots of bigger families. Today, though, I'm running into increasing numbers of kids who are only child or 1 or 2 or blended families and things. our parents don't have the skill set, I think, that parents had a number of years ago. And we've moved into an age where there are a lot of parents who are more interested in seeking the approval of their children than children seeking the approval of parents. And that's been a flip in Western society. You don't see that in other places on earth. And it's part of that Western corruption, if you like, where things have flipped. And it's not been necessarily a good thing. I can remember busting my guts to get a small piece of praise from a parent, and that'd make my day. These days, kids go home and they're lucky to get mum or dad to lift their head from their mobile phone or to give them the time of day. Now, these are things we need to work our way through as a society. Schools have got a role to play in that. But again, it comes back to our society is struggling with this. It's not just schools. They'd be the big things. Our wellbeing policies, I guess, are on a trajectory at the moment. We used to talk more about discipline in schools, and we don't anymore. We talk about the care for the kids in our schools, and I think we've got to move more along that track and to look at I think there's still room for the correction of faults in young people, but there needs to be more science behind that rather than consequence. But I think we're doing it pretty hopelessly in our jails too. So schools will be a few steps ahead of that, and hopefully they all move along and society has a better way of dealing with people who are outside the box or have particular needs.
Just wanted to quickly get your thoughts, Mick, on AI. It's obviously accelerating very fast at the moment. How do you see reshaping teaching in schools?
Yeah, look, I think AI it's a transition, and I don't think it's going to last that long in terms of the impact it has. I think the next things over the horizon are going to overlap that very quickly. The danger with AI, from where I sit, is it's a useful tool, but it draws on conglomerated knowledge, and it doesn't have that quality control, if you like. If you ask an AI program a question, it will give you an answer. It might not be a good answer, and it can't tell the difference between a particularly good answer or a poor one. And we're finding in schools that if it doesn't have an answer, it'll make one up. And that's fraught with danger as well. So kids need to be learning in schools how to be a consumer of what comes out of AI. Not so much to use it, but to evaluate whether it's any good or not. The first answer you get when you look on a computer using AI is not necessarily the most valued one. The other part of AI that we haven't heard enough about is the things being used to deal with images and all the deep fake sort of side of things that are coming out of AI. And it gets, again, back to that thing. How do you evaluate what you're seeing on a screen? Is it real? Is it concocted? Is it designed to harm? And I don't think there's enough constraints in place to stop AI harming our young people, particularly with that deep fake porn style of stuff that's starting to become more and more prevalent. But the other one with AI, I think we're going to move quickly into a time where wearables and injectables are the things that people are using, and increasingly this is going to take you from a time where, at the moment with AI and social media, you can be a very private person and have an overinflated sense of how private you can be, to get us back to, through those technologies, living more a communal life where you're part of a group and you're connected and you can't sneak off or do something harmful without someone else being aware of it and getting a response from the community that you live in. I think once technology fully evolves, it'll be more in that space, and that'll be a good thing.
Yep, that would be a good thing, mate. All right, quick fire question time. You ready?
There we go.
The best principal you've ever worked with?
Don't Jane Donovan, first woman principal I ever worked for, most relational person I've ever met. She really encouraged young teachers.
One thing parents often misunderstands about schools today.
Look, parenting's hard work and things shouldn't be left to schools. The busiest day for principals now in the year are the first day of terms, where we're called upon to clean up everything that went wrong in the holidays. You've got to act as a parent. You've got to monitor your kids' electronics, and you've got to be part of the reaction to what's going on. You can't leave anything to schools. Kids are too precious.
The biggest challenge young people face in 2025.
Lack of accompaniment. They're left to their own devices. I see kids in restaurants on iPads, and I see parents at the park with their head in their mobile rather than watching their kids doing things. They need to be accompanied. They need to know people, a broad range of adults, and to get connected.
Your favourite moment in every school year?
Orientation day, year 6 coming into year 7. I love seeing the funny hairs and the jewellery and all the things that we know are just going to wipe away in no time. We see kids meeting their nemesis from park footy and their aversion to things. These are the times where I get to see what we call the last, the least and the lost in the school. They stick out, and these are the ones you know you're going to be working with for the next 6 years.
Something you wish every new teacher understood on their first day?
Oh, look, you're not your best self. And that's basically it. Neither are any of your pupils. I had a great helper who took all my first year teaching resources and notes at the end of the year and burnt them for me. And he told me quite simply, if this is the best you're ever going to be, you're going to be crap. So get through your first year and be tolerant of your kids, but don't be friendly. You've got to keep a bit of distance.
A leadership mistake you're now grateful for?
My first principalship, I was advised to, take your time, sit back and settle in, and I did, and it was a disaster. I had to quickly flip that on its head and start getting in and hands-on. People don't want an observer as a leader, they want someone who is engaged. And the sooner you get involved in a school and take charge, if you like, and things begin to work.
What's the most underrated role in a school?
I think it's the Year 7 coordinator. They're dealing with the new kids to the school. They have so much work to do there. Parents who are apprehensive and kids who often have got to the end of primary school and have begun to slide under the radar. It's their job to start to unravel that.
What's your favourite Catholic value?
Community. We need to be, we're social beings. We're meant to be in community. You need to be, I feel, to be your best self is to be part of a community. And if we can encourage that in schools, let's do it.
What's one book that shaped your leadership in a meaningful way?
Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Great book.
It's a great book. Yeah.
The biggest opportunity for kids in one sentence?
To immerse themselves and try everything that school offers. Sport, debating, language, music, volunteering. It's all there. And if you don't like it, you can bail out, but have a go.
Yeah. What's the biggest danger for kids in one sentence?
Isolation is the biggest danger. Our urban society is set up for people to retreat into themselves. And we can't allow children to isolate, because in isolation, I believe they're doomed for failure.
Well said. If you weren't in education, what would you be doing?
I do like driving a bus. I took that up because I had to at school. And I must admit, I'm a much calmer driver in a bus than a car, and it's just interesting view on the world. You're up a bit higher and things go a bit slower.
All right, last question. What's the greatest advice you can leave with our audience?
Look, education's relational, and when you can learn, what you can learn when you're connected far exceeds what you'd ever learn on your own. So never forget that the best educational leaders are also learners as well.
Awesome. Thanks. What a great way to finish. Thanks very much for your time, Mick. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, Magnus. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks for coming, mate.